Welcome to the deep dive. So if you've been on a mission to understand, the core drivers of human well-being, you've probably waded through an ocean of stuff.
Oh, for sure. Self-help books, conflicting advice from therapists.
So many fads. The modern struggle for mental health often feels like, just too much information and way too many quick fixes.
And that's exactly why today we are turning away from all that noise and looking back. We're diving into the classical Islamic sciences to explore this really profound, historically integrated view of human psychology.
Yeah, our sources actually call it a lost tradition, a system that was basically the operating instructions for keeping the inward and the outward.
The mind and the body.
The mind and the body in complete synergy.
Right.
Our sources for this deep dive are, they're pretty stacked. We have modern critiques from Islamic psychologists and neuroscientists, ancient wisdom on building real resilience, and then this fascinating body of current medical literature.
Yeah, that stuff is great. It analyzes the physical and mental benefits of the daily prayer, or Salah. Our mission is really to connect all these dots.
We're basically looking at a system designed to counter that information overload, that over-medicalization, by offering a clear daily structure.
And it moves us beyond just asking, how do I feel better today?
Yeah.
To asking a much bigger question, one that really defined this classical scholarship. What is the best way of struggling to become better people?
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this with the history. What's so amazing is that this wasn't just, abstract theology. It was a real intellectual discipline with a formal name, ilm al-nafs.
Right, which translates as the science of the soul or the psyche.
And that's the starting point.
That's the starting point. Ilm al-nafs was a complete system. It addressed the same huge questions that drive Western psychology today. Who are we? How do we find healing? But its genius was in its integration. It wasn't siloed off. It was woven right in with medicine, philosophy, and ethics.
And the sources really stress how seriously they took this pursuit. It wasn't like a soft subject.
Not at all. Historically, studying the psyche, ilm al-nafs, was on the same high intellectual level as studying Islamic law, or fiqh. If you wanted to be a well-rounded scholar, you study the self with the same rigor you study jurisprudence.
Wow. So it was seen as necessary science for a functioning society.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting, and I think this will be a big surprise for a lot of people. They didn't just theorize, they built these pioneering institutions called the Bimaristan.
Oh, they were utterly revolutionary, even by today's standards.
Right.
These were mental health hospitals across the classical Islamic world, and their approach was completely holistic. They treated the whole person, not just a symptom or the spirit in isolation.
Which was so different from what was happening elsewhere at the time.
Worlds apart. In large parts of the West, treatment often involved, isolation, restraint, or worse. The Bimaristan network was offering this sophisticated, integrated care.
Can you give us an example of what that looked like?
Sure. The cure involved the whole therapeutic environment. They managed the patient's diet. They sort of instinctively knew about the gut-brain connection. They regulated temperature, used specific sounds, music, controlled the light. They even used things like the sound of running water for a calming effect.
That's remarkable, because these are the exact techniques that Western psychology is only now fully validating.
Centuries ahead of their time, they treated the person as a single, connected system.
So this tradition isn't just about crisis intervention, which is where so much of modern therapy starts and stops.
No, there's a huge proactive element. The sources talk about Tazkiyat al-Nafs.
And that's a key takeaway.
It's a crucial one. Tazkiyat al-Nafs, the purification of the self, was seen as this ongoing daily commitment for everyone. It was proactive mental and spiritual hygiene.
So not just therapy for when you're broken, but like going to the gym.
Exactly. Going to the gym for your heart and mind every single day. It's that constant work of improvement no matter what your mental health status is.
Okay, so this historical perspective, it naturally leads to a pretty sharp critique of modern approaches. I mean, if they were so advanced centuries ago, what do modern Islamic psychologists take issue with today?
The criticism often boils down to materialism and fragmentation. The modern framework, which is so heavily influenced by things like Freudianism, it just places too much emphasis on the egotistical self.
As the center of the universe.
As the center of the universe. It fixates on repressed childhood trauma, as the only cause for all adult pain, and maybe most dangerously, it tends to over-medicalize everything. It pathologizes normal, painful human experiences.
I was really struck by the nuance there around trauma. That word is so overused now.
It's lost its meaning.
Yeah, and the sources make this clear distinction between the normal pain of life and, genuine clinical trauma.
They do, and it's a vital distinction. Every life has painful experiences, grief, loss, failure, that need to be integrated. But classical scholars absolutely recognize what they call deep shocks to the soul. Sodom al-nafs.
So they knew about severe trauma.
Oh, absolutely. Shocks that were severe enough to cause clinical symptoms, even hallucinations. This proves they understood the concept of clinical trauma long before, say, modern warfare gave us PTSD.
Okay, so they recognized it, but they didn't flatten the definition like we do. What's the danger in labeling every painful thing as a disorder?
Well, the danger is twofold. First, it just drains your resilience. You start to see yourself as permanently broken by normal stress. And second, this critique ties right into our whole societal structure.
How so?
Classical texts identify the lowest stage of the self as nafs al-amara, the commanding self. This is the part of us that's ego-driven, that just wants more, more, more.
And modern capitalist life
Is structured perfectly to keep people stuck right there.
That makes so much sense. The whole system needs constant consumption, constant ego validation. You never get a chance to mature past it.
Precisely. If your environment is constantly rewarding greed and instant gratification, you stay trapped. You never progress to the higher stages of the psyche, like self-reproach or contentment. You're just always chasing that next hit.
So how do you break that cycle? They must have offered a way out.
They did. Through cultivating the virtue of hilm, it's often translated as forbearance or resilience. Imam Ali even called it the crown of virtues.
And how do you get it? It's not just thinking about it, right?
That's the fascinating part. You don't just talk yourself into being resilient. It's acquired through behavior, through effort. You have to walk the walk.
For example?
For example, if you're prone to anger, hilm requires you to actively perform the actions of patience, even if you're boiling inside. You train the external body until the internal self catches up. You get resilience by enduring the friction.
Which brings up a really challenging point for us today, the isolation trend. We're always told to set boundaries, which often just means going no contact to avoid any friction at all.
And this is where the classical view is so provocative. They argued it is actually better for your soul to live among people and deal with the inevitable harm and difficulty they cause than to just isolate yourself.
That sounds harsh. What about genuinely toxic situations?
Oh, they weren't saying stay in abusive situations. That's a clinical issue. They were talking about the ordinary difficulty of community. Their logic was that isolation destroys spiritual growth because it leaves the ego unchallenged.
The spiritual muscle atrophies.
Exactly. If you never have to practice patience with a difficult colleague, that muscle just wastes away. The growth, the reward comes from persevering in community. That constant, low-level friction is what sharpens the self.
So if ilm al-nafs is the sort of philosophical framework, what's the daily workout, the tool that puts it all into practice?
That brings us to the most structured, consistent daily practice. Salah.
The prayer.
The prayer. Salah, that 5 times daily routine, acts as the stability anchor for the mind and body in a chaotic world. It forces a structured pause 5 times a day, pulling you out of that cycle of consumption.
Okay, let's start with the hard science. What does the modern medical literature actually say about the physical side of this?
The medical consensus is really clear. Regular Salah is classified as a low to moderate intensity physical activity. It's comparable to stretching or Tai Chi or yoga.
So real benefits.
Significant benefits. It improves joint mobility, flexibility, blood circulation, balance. It's an excellent source of necessary daily movement, especially for older people.
But let's be clear, it's not an all-in-one fitness solution. We're not saying you can skip the gym.
Absolutely not. And that's a key point in the literature. It's a crucial complement to an active lifestyle. But it is not a full alternative to vigorous exercise. It just doesn't have the sustained elevated heart rate you need for, peak cardio fitness or serious strength building.
It's daily maintenance.
Daily maintenance, not maximal load training.
Okay, I think anyone who has stood in long prayers like Taraweeh during Ramadan knows that feeling of just utter exhaustion after standing still for an hour. Why does standing still feel so much more draining than moving?
That is fascinating physiology at work. The deep fatigue comes from 2 main sources. First, it's isometric loading. Your muscles, especially the big stabilizers in your back, core, and legs are under continuous contraction just to hold you upright. That constant tension can actually be more metabolically taxing than dynamic movement.
And the second source?
Blood pooling. When you stand still for that long, gravity just pulls blood down into your legs. This reduces the amount of blood returning to the heart, which makes the heart work harder to keep everything circulating. That just amplifies that feeling of deep systemic fatigue.
Let's break down the key movements then, starting with the most profound posture, sujood, the prostration.
Sujood is the centerpiece, physically. It's the only position where your head is below your heart. The benefits include maximizing blood flow and oxygen to the brain. Some neuroscientists link this to better cognitive function.
And it's a great stretch.
A great stretch for the spine, and it even helps with sinus drainage.
Are there any physical dangers here? Who should be careful?
Yes, this is important. For anyone with uncontrolled severe high blood pressure, some heart conditions, or specific eye conditions like glaucoma, having the head below the heart can be risky. It increases pressure in the head and eyes.
Which is why there's that principle of ease.
It's a foundational rule. Islam explicitly mandates modifications, praying while sitting or even lying down if any movement causes harm. The goal is wellness, not injury.
Okay, what about ruku, the bowing?
When you do it correctly with a straight back, ruku is a fantastic therapeutic movement. It gives you a great static stretch for the hamstrings and lower back. But, and this is what physiotherapists worry about, if you round your back, you risk significant lumbar strain over time.
And finally, the sitting posture, tashahhud.
Tashahhud requires deep hip and ankle flexibility, which we often lose in our share-based cultures. It's great for range of motion, but it can cause knee strain or foot numbness because of the compression. Again, this just highlights why modifications like sitting on a chair are always encouraged if there's pain.
Okay, so we've covered the body. Let's shift to the mental and emotional side. You said Salah acts as a kind of moving meditation. How does that actually calm the nervous system?
The psychological power is immense. The repetitive movements, the focused recitation, it all acts as an immediate circuit breaker for stress. It's been shown to reduce levels of stress hormones like cortisol. And crucially, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest mode.
The rest and digest mode, it pulls you out of that constant fight or flight state. It's a scheduled emotional reset 5 times a day.
But if it's so centering, why is real concentration, what they call khushu, so universally difficult?
Yeah.
It feels like the second the prayer starts, my brain just switches to laundry list mode.
That is a classic, very human neuropsychological thing. Your brain isn't failing you, it's defaulting.
Defaulting to what?
When we do a highly familiar automatic task, like a prayer we know by heart, the default mode network, or DMN, kicks in. The DMN is the brain's internal chatterbox. It's what's responsible for self-reflection, planning for the future, worrying about the past.
So the DMN is literally the laundry list mode.
Exactly. The brain just detaches from the present and wanders off. So maintaining khushu, that deep focus, it's not some magical state you just achieve. It's a highly complex learned skill.
Like training a muscle.
Just like training a muscle. It improves with practice, preparation, and consciously trying to quiet that DMN.
Let's dig into the psychological power of the postures themselves. We know sujood is physically good, but what's the emotional impact of putting your head, the highest part of you, on the ground?
Psychologically, sujood is this profound act of total surrender and humility. So much of modern anxiety is rooted in the burden of ego-driven control, right? The need to manage every single outcome. By voluntarily putting your forehead on the earth, you are relieving the ego of that crushing responsibility. It's a physical act of grounding, of trust, and it just cuts through that control-based anxiety.
And ruku, the bowing.
Ruku reinforces that submission. The physical act of bowing literally reduces the ego's physical footprint. These postures are designed to manifest the psychological state of a servant, continually resetting the ego's dominance.
And finally, the routine and the community element that ties everything together. It addresses that isolation problem we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. The structure itself provides profound stability. When the world is turbulent, having 5 fixed points in your day is a powerful defense against fragmentation. And when you do it communally, that sense of belonging, of social support, is a massive psychological shield against the loneliness that just plagues modern life.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? The deep dive takeaway is that this tradition provides a whole operating system. Ilm al-Nafs gives you the philosophical framework to cultivate a sound heart, to connect back to your innate good human nature, your fetra.
And Salah provides the daily structured mind-body practice that systematically fights the fragmentation, the ego worship, and the isolation that generates so much modern anxiety. It is the practical tool for building that resilience.
It also completely reframes how we think about pain and struggle.
It really does.
Yeah.
We learn the wisdom that pain, anxiety, stress, even the prick of a needle, if you meet it with perseverance, it leads to real spiritual reward and growth. The model for grief isn't about being told to get over it.
Right.
It's about being given the hope and support you need to grow around it, to integrate that loss without being totally consumed by it. It's a holistic, practical solution that's embedded right into daily life.
So before we wrap up, let's leave you with a provocative thought that connects this lost history to our challenges today. We talked about how advanced the Bimaristan network was, that system of holistic mental health hospitals. That entire network was largely funded by the AQUAF system, private, self-sustaining community endowments and donations, not state funding.
Which raises a really powerful question. Given that the loss of this tradition led to centuries of fragmented, egocentric approaches to mental health, was the destruction of that self-funded, community-driven AQUAF system just as critical in its effect as, say, the political loss of the caliphate?
If that community-funded, decentralized model was the institutional key to true holistic health, could rebuilding that self-funded community support and AQUAF for health and wellness be the critical missing piece we need to truly heal the modern self today? Something for you to consider as you go about your day.
A profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
See you next time.